The question is, how do we go deeper than thought, or practice not believing in our thoughts and working from a deeper place?
Aren't you already at a deeper place? To be fair, you are the deeper place, actually. In other words, built into everyone's question is the answer. Because you are the answer, but not as a questioner particularly. You are the answer. I think one of the phrases used in the traditions is working with yourself. I don't know if that's possible, but it sounds good, like you can work with something. Yourself needs it, right? It's really more, don't try and fix anything. How's that? Don't try and get rid of anything. Don't enter conflict with anything that's arising with your consciousness or state, right? Is there really anything there when you look as deeply as you can? Is there any real problem? Well, seems to disappear, right? The more you look at it, even now when you think about all your problems and all the stuff you're usually concerned about, what happens when you look at it? Seems to give way to what? What's always present. That we can call fundamental awareness, if you choose to use that word. Somebody is being here. So we have to be careful not to empower the dilemmas of mind, matter, spirit, self, and so on. And go back to an old one, it's like just be. Nothing. Just be. A profound discipline. Dalai Lama and those masters would say, be as you are. Be as you really are. Say, as a basic, breathing, living being. Without complication, without neuroses. So addressing it that way, you start to see you're already more quiet, and what you think is your thought is already disappearing. Why? How? We are not thought, but we're capable of thought. Be awareness. Do you have a choice? Can you not be awareness? That seems to be the very root of anything that's being thought of or felt or perceived at all. If you are awareness of what it is, or awareness of what it isn't. And we can go deep and say the space of awareness between thoughts and words. Perceived intimately may be found to be silence. So then meditation techniques that are perhaps recommended to take a deeper look at the thought process actually help you to see what thought isn't more than what it is. So, and perhaps in the direction of what being is beyond thought. Who's being beyond thought? Is that possible? Is it your truth Is it your practice? Is it your nature? Is it your program? Or what has thought got to do with anything? After a while, you say, well, thinking? Who would be wasting their time thinking? What a bug that is. Yeah. Then thinking, if and as needed from, let's say, the inner reality, shows up in a selfless manner. You're given the thought. It's not like you are thinking. You might be observing or witnessing your own or its own thought process, which is not a bad beginning. Whose thought is it anyway?
So why would anybody begin to learn about astrology or time mastery, as you call it?
Why? It's a good
Yeah.
question. Why shouldn't anybody do it?
Mm-hmm.
I don't recommend it. No. Is it valid? It's relatively valid, yeah. Useful? For some, most definitely. Question?
So then how would somebody go about learning?
Say, because we are time. We are time. Yeah. We are living time. Time is Lord in the material universes, right? And we're talking about the process of the pulse, vibration, rhythm, and cyclic phenomena. Yeah. Heartbeat, brainwave, inhalation, exhalation. Measurements of, let's say, living. And so we are time. And any way we can measure, maybe understand, process, or transcend time, of course, that's significant. And the ancients seem to have always known about the planets, because when you get into a real history of the planet, it has to be planetary history. That means solar systemal history. That means galaxial history, and that means universal history, interdimensional history. Yeah. We are time, so we're not just watch time, we're cosmic time. So the planets are a product of that reality. They are in time and in orbits, subject to the same forces of time, endurance, and disintegration as everything else. So they are understood in terms of what their function is as time beings or time machines. The planets are time beings. We are each subject to that, and thus we are Earth-level time beings. And should pay attention to time, because this is a universe after all. It's an organism. It's one huge organism that's breathing and exhaling and creating and decreating itself simultaneously, continuously.
Why have you written books on astrology and the practice of your particular flavor of knowing based on?
Because people have asked about that. Many astrologers came to me when I was younger and gave me something to reflect upon. Right? And I've had these, let's say, experiences relative to time And by that I mean having the same kind of experience during the same time of the year, without being conscious of it, let's say. And having had experiences since I was very young that also were evidence of this fact. And we're talking about mishaps and vulnerability to a certain level of accidental sort of experience. And so in the process of looking at that, I saw a pattern. So how could that be? That would imply predictability. And that's what I found out, and that's the basis for astrology. To confirm certain patterns. Not tell you who you are, what you must do, but there's correspondence because there is connection. We are the solar system depending on your perception of what level of, let's say, relationship you have to it. We're in the same stream, in the same space. So what I had was of interest to astrologers, and then with qualification. And then I would say, well, this is not necessarily or particularly good. See, the fact of it is maybe terrifying. Because you're really subject to influences you're not even aware of, or a time pattern that's already predetermined in many cases to perceptive astrologic, let's say, practitioners. Yeah. And so for the ancient yogis and masters, this is an issue. This is a wonder, an awe. See? How could this all be that way? See? Who set this up anyway? Who's running the show here? See? Without believing in a God, there might be a Lord of time that could be even more, let's say, catastrophically implied in our existence and influencing us than we've thought of before. Who's the Lord of time that we're subject to, and why? See?
So how is it useful for somebody to explore their own chart and reference?
It's only useful when you know yourself well enough to corroborate or confirm what the data is. I discovered as let's say, a beginner, right, in the field, as a curious onlooker, observer, let's say, that not everybody's at the same level of resonance with the planets. So you have those that are beneath the level of resonance with the planets. And what is told about the planets, and let's say the dogma or science, the evidence of, let's say, planetary relationships to human behavior and so on, is really planetary behavior, it's not just human behavior. And that there were those who are at that level, where if you chart their moves, their life changes, you could write a great astrology book if you can do that. Because they're that in tune, in resonance with the cycles. If you know the cycles, you have the right value system and the meanings of it, then you can see that, oh, wait a minute. This person's right on time here. I mean, to the day, right? To the beat, to the minute. I've experienced that. And I said, no, this can't be, but it is, so whoops. This is far out. Right? And then you have those that are way beyond the astrologic level. See? Because operating from different, let's say, forces of time, different levels of time, space, energy, and matter. See, their resonance with that is different. They're creating, maybe. So, comment. I've seen all of that. And I've determined that, and I've written about it because it's important to write about what is true, say, to human experience. And when it's true to your observations and you see cycles and patterns, then it becomes science, regardless of what material scientists or physicists say about it. It's irrelevant because the universe isn't physical alone. The universe is mostly psychic energy. Maybe 2% material, and the rest is like big question mark. As from the astrophysicist viewpoint and the so-called quantum physicists. So, the so-called leaders of who say, who knows? Why, you think you were talking to yogis? You know, me? What? Who? Why? When? Where? And how? Come on. Very good. So when we're talking about this perceived resonance, well, maybe factual. Depends on what we're talking about exactly. Okay. Relative to the study of time based upon, let's say, astronomic logarithms and positions and all the rest of that. Right? And assumptions that are handed down by the ancients in terms of what these equations mean in terms of behavioral potential or probabilities. I think we're talking about astrology as more probability. And there are those who are right on it. And these individuals are good astrologers, right? Because then they are in the resonance of time. So it's not about the planets, it's about your perception of the planets. So the planets have nothing to do with it. Your perception does. And I say the same for music. It's not about music. It's who's playing what relative to music. Spiritual. Who realizes what relative to the spiritual? Yeah. These are important questions.
Is there anything, once we know something about our chart and our alignments and our resonances, is there anything to be done with that knowledge?
To be done with it?
Yeah.
Try to understand it properly. Because it's really not only about what that's doing to you, but what you're doing to it at the same time. And the it then is your life. So it's not about a hippie, trippy, astrologic phenomena. No, that's kind of cheap. No, it's not what it is. How you're breathing, how you're thinking, how you're moving, how you're acting, and what you are doing. See, how you are creating waves out here. That's what it is. And so, let's say the yogis, as I have done when I was young, reduced it to the minutes and their particular influences. Planetary degrees and minutes. That kind of minutia. And see if there's anything valid there. I realize that is also true in sidereal astrology. Yeah. Who cares? That's what it is. Who cares about it? Yeah. So is it important to have a sense of time? It depends on where you are, because your karma is already laid out for you. And I found people who had nothing to do with astrology in the exactly predicted place, and they said, well, I'm not interested in astrology. Neither was I, up to a point. And then when I had this kind of like coincidental, catastrophic awakening over that, wow, this is exactly on some kind of clock time here. Wait a minute. I just had a mid-air collision with parachute jumping, and it's like to a degree that is like, what? So when you have these coincidences with time, so you're seeing or finding yourself in a certain kind of workable operative resonance with planetary, let's say, data, right? Call it bogus science or whatever, but once you see the facts and you're in that time and place, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to believe, you just know. Say, oh, so this is what the ancients were talking about, and why this particular game, if it's a game of non-materialistic science or pseudoscience, oh, this is worthy of kings and queens and emperors and empresses, dictators, or whatever, people of the utmost power. So they were interested in this. Wonder why? And of what value would it be if you're emperor, to have someone who's in proper resonance with the planets and can tell you what no one else can tell you, because they're chosen to do that. There's no believing.
Is this almost a discussion of free will? For example, if you know that you're set up for
you are
an
free
event.
you are free to be bound. That's what the freedom is, right? You're in this universe of time, so you're free to be bound by time because you're here. Right? You're not going to tell your heart to stop beating. Huh? We know what happens here, or your brain to stop vibrating, not waving. That means you're finished, you're over. So you have the free will to be and not to be here. Well, actually, ultimately, you have the free will to be living here and to be dead here. It's all part of the same free will. So as you say, so you have to question, what do you mean by free will? Because everything said and everything alluded to is bound to circumstances. So it's compounded. And that's also related to the theory of relativity. What is that called? Right? Dependent origination. Same thing. Relativity. Theory of relativity from the ancients. The ancients who didn't have to be geniuses of science to figure out, well, the moon is related to Earth, it's over there, the sun is related to here, and it's affecting the flowers and plants, and everything is like all connected, so it's all relative, right? When this happens, the rest happens. So, ancients knew that. The natives knew that. So they didn't question that. They didn't have to document it. They could see it because they were living it coming.
So what is the power of knowing about your situation or anybody's situation? Why is it not just a curiosity?
No one's saying it's curiosity, because it's the very presence of the planets that is working through you to take a good look at itself. So you have more respect for the fact that you have a certain amount of time under certain conditions to get certain things done, if you will. It's not about you. It's not about your ego. You're used by time. You were born at a certain time, and you're being used by the forces of the actual experience of birth, so, at this point. And that's correlating to death. Birth, life, death. They're all wrapped up in a veil. You're here to die. You're dying already. Some of us are already dead, but some of us are just starting to live at the same time. Come on. Yeah, the Earth is moving from one point to the next point. It's already known what those points are. It's going to keep rotating. It's going to happen. The moon and the sun are going to interact. It's going to happen. Nothing you can do about it. So, you're just here and it's happening. And depending on what your understanding of what it is, it's happening symbolically or actually or experientially. You might decide to do something. Something can cause you to think and move and change or whatever, but that's the nature of the universe. That could be a falling leaf, or an apple falling out of a tree, or something blowing in the wind, and all of a sudden cause you to think, or know, or be something. All of which are valid, depending on who we're talking about and what they're supposed to do with that. Malarkey.
So in my experience, which relative to astrology and having charts read, is relatively limited. My knowledge is not in any way comprehensive, but seeing things happen on time is
Evidence.
Yeah,
it speaks for itself.
Yeah,
You don't have to believe anything. Just keep time. Watch and see what happens.
Yeah.
Scientists get to see what they want to see. And scientists are not, just people who are declared scientists by way of a degree, an academic degree. We're all scientists. We're observing anything. We're all here, like we're experiencing the evidence of time, space, energy, and matter. See, and evolutionary forces, progression.
And I think one of the liberating, one of the juicy things about astrology for a practitioner or for
time mastery. It's what you need to master, because if you don't, you're being mastered by it, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
If time rules, then death is going to close the show. Not particularly you. It will close the show for you.
Yeah, and there is a spaciousness and a certain universality that is made obvious, and real when these things happen, when these coincidences manifest. And it can take the wind out of the self's sails, so to speak, to realize that there is time working, there are planets working, that what we think...
There's a oneness working.
Yes.
See, the relative perception of the, let's say, body-mind are not what it is. It's deeper than that. And so without paradox, we can't come to a radically, let's say, basic understanding. So is it much time or is it space? And we have to say it's both time, space. It's time, space. If you're into the astronomic phenomena that we're talking about in terms of solar systems and galaxies and so on, there's a perfection here. There's like a mind-boggling sort of working here, working out and solving the problem of being life. See it. On this planet and every other planet and every other becoming planet that there is. The becoming planet. Not quite manifest yet, formed yet, but in the machinery of the creative universe, the matrix of the universe, the mother of the universe. We're part of that. So any intelligence that we're given, that means the impulse to figure out the time and let's say the solar system, is a good thing. It's a good thing. You learn from it, but you have to look into it to learn from it and let it reveal itself to you. And that's another thing. It's not like pop, say entertainment. No, something much deeper than that. You want to see how it works. You want to see how people who are dying are subject to these forces, and you have to see what those forces are for yourself. And how someone dies on that moment. Boom. And when you're able to see, you understand, you say, perfect conclusion, like the last note of a symphony. Timing. It ends, something begins. A part of the continuous stream, see, of creative manifesting. The universe is responsible for, not just the God, but the universe is sort of like creating itself. See, as a self, you can say, well, you need to know. You need to know this, that, and whatever. As a self, you can get away with that theatrical sort of like positioning. See? But it's the blood. So it's deeper than you that needs to know. Because there are things you can say, you'd like to know? Well, and you may know. But then there are things you can't help, but you need to know what it is for real for you. And it's almost like do or die, or do and die in the process. I need to know. Right? We're talking about extreme thinkers and scientists and explorers that need to know. Do and die in the process. That's different. That's the blood. That's not self. Yeah. It's unconscious and maybe superconscious. It's not just a self. Yeah. No. Not really. So from the depths, we have real catastrophic intelligence. Yeah. Come in. It's blood. You're moved by the blood to know and not to know. And when you are in resonance with the soul, you already know, and there's nothing else to know, actually. And there's then peace. And then you know peace. And then that starts a whole new cycle of awareness. Knowing peace means what? What can you then know as peace that you couldn't know as stress? Yeah. So it's not that your ego needs to know about the mysteries of the universe. No, it's too simple. No, it needs to know. It needs to know itself through you to complete its need to know. No, I'm not giving you an answer, I'm giving you a hint of the process, of the paradox of knowing. Knowing needs to know itself. And when it reaches that resonance where it's satisfied with knowing itself, then it move on to something else. It may not be knowing anymore. I don't need to know that anymore. Then you have to question, well, it wasn't really about knowing, was it, after all? In other words, the blood had feasted itself enough. Go somewhere else. Or it disappears completely. Is enlightenment the end of all knowing? Is it the beginning of all knowing? If there is such a thing. Is that related to the blood relative to the higher brain function? Or the spiritual functioning of the brain? That's a good question. Or is it something that's given from a student to teacher, or maybe from the wind to your heart? Does it come from the stars? Does it come from deep within? Probably both, because they're related. So these are good questions. We are time and space, energy, matter, and mind, and no mind. Time is blood. Blood is time. There's nothing here that shows up anywhere without being on time or in time or from or as time itself. The universe is that kind of a intricate, sort of very intimately sort of interlaced reality, molecularly speaking. Cosmic fabric, subatomic particles and so on. The reality within and, say, around us. It's like astonishing how, all of this is part of it. But everything is part of it. Not just anything, but everything is part of it. And then you can go so deep into the anything and everything that's part of it, you get to the nothing of what it is. And then you get from time to timelessness. If the mind can comprehend that. And then we have to think of what the planet's source is. It's not just the sun. What is the sun's source? It's not just the solar system. What is the solar system source? Not just the galaxy. What is the galaxy source? Not just the universe. What is the universe's source? And that's what we are, this kind of big question mark. That's imprinted in all of us as being part of the living paradox of no one, no thing. And that's the all itself, the all knowing nothing. Come in. Not to believe it, not even to think about it, not even to imagine it. Wonder.